What's up, guys? Welcome for my draft analysis video for the MBC, new Wi-Fi league that I joined. It's running its second season now. It's run by Will. If you guys don't know Will, check him out in the description down below. He's one of the coaches this season. All of the coaches will be linked in the description down below, as is per usual with upload mandatory leagues. But yeah, this is a new Wi-Fi league that I decided to join, and I wanted to see what my level of compete was in Wi-Fi. I haven't gotten too much of a taste of it this gen, but I wanted to hop back into it. So here we are. Obviously, I had the BBR run where I made it to finals and ended up losing to Owen. So that was a pretty successful run, I'd say. We had a really solid team. Now, obviously, I don't have a Pikachu on this team. It's just here as a placeholder so that we can go one by one without spoiling what's on the team. Of course, you already probably saw a couple of the members in the thumbnail, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to put the first overall draft pick for myself in the thumbnail, and that is going to be Deoxys Speed. So first mon up here, I decided to go with early picks that were non-Terra eligible but still very good mons, because there are a lot of Pokemon in this league that are not actually Terra eligible, more than most standard leagues. So you really have to like look for the best possible options, and I think I ended up with one of the best ones. So first mon, Deoxys Speed. Obviously a mon that doesn't need to Terra, doesn't have a huge benefit terastallizing, so I decided to grab it first. We were picking like 10th or something, like pretty late into round 1, maybe even further than 10th, I don't know. So I just checked and it's actually 9th. Sorry. So yeah, I think it was 9 out of 12 that we were picking, so pretty late into the first round. But Deoxys Speed was still hanging around, so I was like, screw it, let's get it. It's a pretty solid mon, really good as a lead. Obviously, as you guys know, that's his primary function, like the Ubers tier is to lead, set hazards, have taunt, all that stuff. But it's also a very good breaker, actually, despite this low base 95 special attack, because of its enormous speed. Like, it pretty much already naturally outspeeds some of the fastest threats in the game, being like Spectrier and stuff, right? And then on top of that, if you just add a little bit more speed, suddenly you're faster than Dragapult. Right here, you'd be faster than Zeraora as well if it existed, but yeah, you're faster than Pult with just 104 special attack investment. So what you can do is you can go plus special attack. You can even go like a minus Spadef nature, let's say, if you're fearing like a Sucker Punch or whatever, and you invest the rest into attack, and then you toss on a Life Orb, and then suddenly this thing's Psycho boosts are hitting super strong, gets access to Psychic Noise, which is quite useful. Obviously, we mentioned Taunt and the hazards, but it also has other applications in the status department. It can set up in multiple fashions through Calm Mind, Iron Defense, Nasty Plot, really a plethora of stuff, even agility if it wants to, and it does have access to stored power, so that's really good. And then of course, it's also one of the few mons this gen with access to teleport. It gets Thunder Wave, so it can status stuff as well. It gets Trick, which is useful on such a fast mon, and normally you don't really want to run a Choice Scarf on this thing unless you're outspeeding other Choice Scarfers, specifically stuff like Greninja, Battle Bond and Greninja, right after it gets a KO. You can run a Scarf to cover that, but yeah, there's really good options here, and obviously a really good coverage overall. Obviously, you have Psychic Stab, but then you have Focus Blast, Ice Beam, Energy Ball, Flash Cannon, Fire moves here, and like Fire Punch, like really anything you could ever ask for. Even gets Meteor Beam, so if you wanted to slap on Power Herb here, you could. That's an option to get the special attack up to a really good amount. And yeah, it can function as a breaker, it can function as a setup sweeper, and it can function as a hazard lead, an anti-lead even. So just a really flexible, fast, really good mon. I think that Deoxys Speed is... I've undervalued it in the past. I've said that it's not that great, but honestly, it really can do anything it wants to. So yeah, that's our first pick. So with the next pick, you guys saw the title of the video. I'm going to be titling this mons that I like hate, basically. So for the second pick for the Montreal Habsols, we decided to go with Iron Bundle. And I'm not a fan of Bundle, especially when it can't Terra. But now we have Dio Speed and Bundle, which means we have two of the fastest threats in the game. slap booster on this with speed, and you outspeed pretty much every Scarfer except for Dragapult, which is like the only super fast mon that's not on this team. And really cool that it can also run like a pretty like physically defensive set. I've seen cool stuff with that, like you set up Hail and then it can set up Aurora Veil. Let's say you have a Slowking. This team doesn't have a Slowking, but let's say if you did, right? If you have something else to set Hail, then you can Aurora Veil with Bundle, and suddenly you can even live hits on the special side, which is really cool. And the fact that it doesn't always have to run a massive amount of speed, kind of like Dio, is also really great for it. Also, its stab combination goes unresisted. However, the problem with it is that it has to run Hydro Pump if it wants its water stab. So that's unfortunate, but yeah, this combination goes unresisted because Freeze Dry hits waters for super effective. So basically you just slap these 3 moves on here and you are like an insanely powerful breaker with max special attack. If you're running specs, then pretty much like nothing switches into Hydro Pump except for resists and stuff with like dry skin and whatever. But yeah, really cool stuff here. Also gets access to Encore. This is big. Fast Encore this gen is like extremely valuable because you can basically stop any setup mon. Like if I come in with booster speed with this thing on, say, a Roaring Moon, and I creep it by 1 point, then suddenly I can Encore it into Dragon Dance and it can't do what it wants to anymore. So that's dealt with, etc. Also gets access to Flip Turn for momentum, which is really nice, especially when you have some of the other breakers that we have on this team, which I will show you. And yeah, just you can run a few different things. It gets access to Taunt, it gets access to U-Turn if it doesn't want to use Flip Turn, right? If aforementioned Dry Skin mon on the team, something like that. And then it can even boost its own stuff with like Electric Terrain if it really wants to, but it's a very, most of the time, pretty one-dimensional mon. It's not going to be running physical sets with base 80 attack for the most part. I don't believe it gets Ice Shard either. It does not. No, it only gets Spinner. So I mean, if I really had to break a Blissey, it's an option, but probably not happening, right? So yeah, that's Bundle. Not much more to say there. And we can move on to the next one. So round 3 rolls around. So Snake format, right? It goes, yeah, that way for you on screen. Goes from 1 to 12, then back, right? And then it's coming back around to me again in 9th position. And so this is by now the 24 plus 8, 32, 33rd pick overall. And this mon was just sitting on the board, and I was like, why has nobody grabbed this yet? And I'm glad I did, because somebody else was going to, I think it was Fist, who was going to take this immediately if it made it back to him. So I'm glad I got it, but our round 3 pick is Garchomp. Yes, that's right. If you've never seen a round 3 Garchomp, here it is. It's a very, very powerful mon. It's very strange to get it round 3, but obviously this thing has access to Scale Shot plus loaded dice, most common set that you're going to see, but it also has its Rough Skin Rocky Helmet set. It's got its Dual Hazard set because it now gets spikes, of course. Dragon Tail is a useful tool to get stuff out. Brick Break's also cool for breaking opposing screens. Like, this thing just has a nice rounded move pool, stats, and like ability plus item combination. Like, it's very hard to beat Garchomp in terms of like the ground type that you want on your team. Like, the only thing that's really better right now is Tusk. Everything else, you could make an argument for Treads. Definitely not Lando. I would say that Garchomp's way better than Lando, but yeah, I really like this this combination, because on top of that, like Scarf Garchomp, like you put Deoxys Speed, Iron Bundle, and Scarf Garchomp on the same team, and like what's outspeeding you, right? And they all have really like decent breaking power. Like I mentioned with Deoxys, the ability to go Modest, and or Naive or whatever, Rash. That's it. And then Iron Bundle, of course, also being able to go Modest if it really wants to. Like, I think it can do this and then still get... No, it can't get Speed Booster anymore. But if there's nothing faster than 371, conveniently, Cinderace and Roaring Moon hit this speed. If there's nothing faster on the opposing team than this speed, then you could theoretically go Specs Modest. So that's fast breaking power, and once again, fast breaking power with Garchomp. So having these 3 together is very hard to prep for. I would say. It's not going to be easy to switch in. Like, yes, there's switch-ins to Deoxys for sure. It's a little bit harder to find switch-ins for Bundle and Garchomp, though. So I think they make a really nice pairing here. And now I pretty much am set on hazards. Like, I'm good with Stealth Rocks and Spikes. However, being that these two mons, specifically Deoxys and Garchomp, do like to have offensive sets a lot of the time, I decided to get one more very reliable rocker, and it's going to be our Steel type. And it's also a fairy, and I've been praising this mon for like the past half year or so. I think that it's one of the better fairies in the gen, just because it has the ability to do so many different things, and it can actually stand up to Enamorus and Iron Valiant specifically, like for the most part. Like obviously if Val gets off an SD as you switch this thing in, it's not going to be that great. You're going to die to close combat. But our fourth member on the team is Tinkaton. So yeah, Mold Breaker, huge. Pickpocket, great item. Able to just steal like Choice Scarf from Meowscarada as it U-turns, for example, if you're holding like an air balloon. Really cool application there for Pickpocket. One of the first like really good pickpocket mons, like Weavile had it in the past, could never really run it because it would die in one to almost anything. Mold Breaker is also pretty cool because it gets through, what does it get through? It gets through like Unaware, it gets through Good as Gold, which is huge. Like for Goldango, being able to Thunder Wave it, being able to Encore it into Recover or Nasty Plot or anything else, right? Really cool. And yeah, other than that, obviously, this thing does not have the greatest attack stat. Gigaton Hammer is a house of a move. However, it's pretty unreliable. Like, if somebody knows to run Protect against you, it's not that great. But this thing does have other ways of chipping stuff, like through Foul Play, for example. That's one way you can do it. It's got Endeavor if it gets low, which is really nice. And then it also has Brick Break to break opposing screens. It has SD, so it can set up as well. And of course, as we mentioned, this is going to be one of our primary rockers here. And I believe it also gets Light Screen and Reflect. So it's also a dual screener on the team, which is cool. So like I mentioned earlier, Bundle behind Veil, pretty threatening. Tinkaton can set those up if it really wants to. And then other than that, there's not too much more to talk about with Tink, but its typing and stat distribution make it a very, very good Steel type in the format. And I would argue one of the better fairies, hands down. Definitely not one of the best steals, but actually it could go both ways. I think it could honestly go both ways. You could make the argument for Tinkaton being like both a top 3 steal and a top 3 fairy in Gen 9 draft. Like really, it could, like someone could make the argument. I don't know if I'm ready to, but as far as this typing combination, I think that it's better than the other steel fairy available to us, which is Klefki. I think the Tink is better just because, one, it has a little bit more damage output than Klefki, so it's not like as easily walled. It has a more diverse move pool as well, with stuff like Ice Hammer, Knockoff, right? Like it doesn't get hard walled the same way that Klefki does against certain Pokemon. And also the ability to set up with Swords Dance, of course, boosting its attack. Makes it like not as passive. Like Klefki is really just going to sit there, get up screens, get up spikes, Thunder Wave you, maybe hit you with a Dazzling Gleam, maybe hit you with a Foul Play, maybe switcheroo you I don't know, a Toxic Orb or something, right? But other than that, it's not really going to hit you for damage, so it kind of just sits there and does nothing. Tink doesn't really fall into that category, which is why I prefer it. And I think it's a much better Steel Fairy than Klefki this gen, because things are so fast-paced, right? That's the thing with Gen 9 is that it's so volatile. Like, you have to be hitting an offensive... Like, your turn has to be worth it every single turn. Every time you click something, you have to be making progress in some way. You can't just sit there and be passive. Like, yes, screens are great, but there's a reason that Aurora Veil is better than just setting up Light Screen and Reflect this gen. It's because it takes too long and it's abusable. So that's Tink for you. Now, Bundle is a good Encore Mon. Tink is a good Encore Mon. We have 2 more Encore Mons coming up. So I had a heavy emphasis on Encore with this team. I wanted to make sure to insulate against like pretty much all forms of setup. And we actually picked up another Encore Mold Breaker Mon, funny enough. So another Mon that can deal with Goldango. But also, it can also defog on Goldango, which is the one true application that this mon has, outside of like being its like standard sets, which are 2. Our 5th mon on the team is Hawlucha. Now, the next mon on the team is like way more valuable than Hawlucha, I would say, but the way that the picks panned out, it made more sense for me to take Lucha here. So I did, and yeah, like I mentioned, Mold Breaker, really cool with like Taunt and Encore, as mentioned earlier, right, for Goldango. But that's like, it's like one really true niche application, but other than that, Hawlucha is still incredibly solid as a mon overall, right? Its defensive stats are not great, but they're good enough to where if you invest in them, like Hawlucha's not going to die to one super effective hit necessarily. And what's cool about that is that you can like run Citrus, right, still on a set like this and run like Acrobatics, maybe Roost, maybe Bulk Up, right? And then suddenly, with Unburden, of course, now you're still faster than everything. And you also have a boost in attack and in defense. And you have a powerful acro. And you could have a powerful Drain Punch. You could have a powerful close combat. You could run close combat with the other herb, White Herb, right? That immediately gives you burden. And speaking of herbs, this is one of the 2 best Mirror Herb users, in my opinion, is Hawlucha, because it triggers Unburden, so it can pretty much switch into any setup threat and immediately abuse what it just did, right? Like if you switch into Volcarona, for example, Volcarona is not like a huge draft threat or anything, I'm just using an example. If you switch into Hawlucha to Volcarona, it's no longer faster than you, and now it has to worry about unitemed acrobatics, right? So you could take that as an opportunity to maybe get up a Swords Dance as they switch out to their check. Or you could just knock out the Volk, right? Because Volk's not going to be allowed to Terra in most leagues, so there's that. And also, you can Encore, right? Now your Unburden is triggered, so you're faster than the opposing mon. So if it wants to attack you, say it doesn't die to Acro straight up, you just lock it into its setup move. So a lot of really cool applications with Hawlucha, and there's also still like Scarf sets, Banded sets, which can also be massive threats, and the fact that it can defog, getting rid of hazards, is pretty important as well, because as you can see, the first 4, while not like ultra weak to hazards, there are 3 here that are grounded, so Toxic Spikes are a little bit annoying, and Bundle doesn't like rocks. So Lucha is our primary hazard removal. We picked up one other form of hazard removal later. It's not the best though, so I'm considering transactions to rework the bottom half of the team. But these first 6 mons for sure are staying, because I think that they are super good in draft overall, like individually, and I think that they actually complement each other really nicely in terms of team synergy. So that's Hawlucha, and the next mon, like I mentioned, way more value than Hawlucha, and it's actually our first Terramon on the team. And I thought personally, this is probably the best available Terra option on the board. I'm surprised it lasted till round 6. I guess people weren't looking at it, but truly I feel like this mon has very few checks. Like it's very hard to switch into once it gets its Terra off. And the other typings on the team actually cover its weaknesses relatively well, I would say. And that is going to be Ogrepon. Now, I've had Ogrepon in the past. I had it in TGS, the Showdown League that we did at the same time as the BBR. And I didn't have it as a Terramon. And L5 was yelling at me to terrestrialize the Ogrepon. Now, at the time, I had Terra Archaludon and Terra Raikou. And I thought that they made a really good Terra pairing. And my team didn't support having Terra Ogrepon instead of one of the 2 of them, because I would need to drop the Terra off the other based on budget for Terra points, which was, I believe, like 25 at the time. And Raikou and Archaludon added up to that. But Ogrepon, good luck switching in to Choice Banded, Woodhammer, or Ivy Cudgel with most things, actually, while also having to deal with Iron Bundle, Garchomp, and Deoxys Speed, one of which is flip turning into the Ogrepon. constantly. So most things that are going to be able to check bundle like decently well are going to be like your bulky psychics, right? Stuff that has like really good SPDF and can recover off damage. And I don't know, stuff like some steals, I guess, can deal with it. There's a few mons, but if you flip turn into Ogron, most of the time the stuff that's resisting bundle is not going to be able to resist Ogron, and it's also going to create a little flip and U-turn loop. So Choice Banded Ogron, this is one way to run it, by the way. This is not the only way to run it, because there are multiple ways you can run Ogron. For example, just like Life Orb Swords Dance with low kick knockoff, right? Stuff like this. And if you need like a Trailblaze, let's say a Woodhammer or Ivy Cudgel plus knockoff covers the whole team, then you can run Trailblaze to outspeed opposing Scarfers that are faster than Ogron naturally. Because the cool thing about Ogron, when it gets terastallized, is that its speed goes up by 1. So this actually creates a really cool dynamic where you can actually go adamant in some cases, and then you have a 372 attack mon with a life orb and extra boost to its stab through terastallizing, and then it becomes extremely difficult to switch into Ogron. Through experience, like just coming in on this mon is so difficult because oftentimes the stuff that you're using to check Ogron you need around for other stuff on the team. For example, not Pikachu. Let's get rid of Pikachu, actually. Hold on. My bad. For example, Deoxys, right? So Dio, normally what's going to come in on Dio is like Psychics and Steals, right? Like they'll be able to eat hits. Let's say, actually, let's use Ting Lu as an example, right? Your Ting Lu has to switch into Deoxys. If I make a double into Ogron, suddenly you're in a terrible spot. Now you go into your Steel type, and I get to U-turn on your Steel type into Lucha or Garchomp, or maybe your Steel type is weak to water, for example, right? Maybe it's a Heatran, who knows? And I get in bundle, right? And now I can Hydro Pump you. So Ogron creates this nice little loop of momentum with Hawlucha and Iron Bundle, and I think they honestly really complement each other. And just building, I've already built for week 1. Just building for week 1 has felt really smooth with this team. Like, just everything falls into place quite naturally, and I think that Ogron was a very underlooked threat going into this draft, and I don't think enough people are respecting it. Like, I've seen what this thing can do. Obviously, most of my experience with Terra Ogron has come from Team Tours and seeing what it can do there. There's only 8 mons in Team Tours, right? Your drafts are 8 mons. They're not like 11. So obviously there's going to be a little bit more counterplay to Ogron, but I was also able to get Deoxys Speed, Iron Bundle, and Garchomp. Like, most teams should not be able to get that 3-mon combination. Like, that should not be possible. And on top of that, you throw on Ogron. So I couldn't be happier with the way this draft started. And I had to fill out a lot of roles, though. Moving forward, I did have to fill out a lot of roles. First role that I had to fill out was a Grounded Poison, because, as I mentioned earlier, Garchomp, Deoxys, Bundle, and now Ogron as well all kind of lose to T-Spikes, so I don't want those up if I can avoid them. Some teams aren't going to necessarily have access to T-Spikes, in which case this mon might not come, but if they do, then we have our trusty partner, Muck. If you remember my BBR run, Muck was a huge part of that. It was able to deal with a lot of Pokemon, including like Pecharunt and stuff, and Spectrier and whatnot. So Muck's a really good special tank, and it's got a lot of really good utility tools at its disposal. Stuff like Pain Split, Haze, Knockoff, obviously a huge one. Access to T-Spikes itself, which can be very impactful in a game when you're already like out momentuming your opponent and everything's faster than them, right? So they have no choice but to switch into your threats, and like Ogron and Bundle and Dio can just like completely snowball out of control. So T-spikes are huge. And then just other than that, I don't want to reveal too much, but you guys probably saw a lot of it in my BBR run if you caught that. Just stuff like, you know, curse and like the fact that this thing can set up and it gets pretty good like coverage in like ice punch, fire moves, can even memento out. Like that's something I haven't utilized yet, but like there's application for it, obviously. And just having a grounded poison in general is a really important role. So there's not too much to say on Muck, but the fact that it can deal with like Enamorus and Val to an extent and stuff, you know, just having that extra layer that can come to a game that isn't Tinkaton. Like if Tink has to deal with something else, then it's always good to have multiple Mons that can check a lot of the top tier threats. Speaking of, one Mon that I've recently become acquainted with through my run in the DCL championship run, by the way. We are the champions as of this past weekend. One member on our team, arguably our best Scarlet and Violet player, Soggy Doggy Sage, was a huge advocate for this Mon, and it's a typing combination that I really wanted on the team. First of all, I needed a flying resist. As you can see, our only flying resist is Tink, so we have to help it out again. And then we also need a normal resist because our only normal resist is Tinkaton, so you can see where this is going. The Mon on Sage's wish list for every draft we had in Scarlet and Violet for the Draft Champions League tournament on Smogon was Rotom, regular Rotom. Now, why is Rotom so much better than every other Rotom form? Specifically, this Rotom I think is actually extremely valuable this gen, mainly because of the ghost typing. Sorry about that. And the speed. So you see this base 91 speed? You know what this does? Funny enough, this outspeeds Great Tusk. And this is ultra important, right? Because with a Cobra Berry, this thing essentially denies spin. Like your opponent basically cannot spin on you. And because I'm rocking with, as you saw, Garchomp, Deoxys, and Tinkaton setting hazards, I not only got a Defiant Mon in Ogerpon, I also got a spin blocker. So something to deny rapid spin. And that is going to come in extremely handy when the best spinner in the format happens to be slower than you, can't hit you with either one of its stabs, has to resort to knockoff, and you can basically just outplay it the whole game. Rotom is really, really good at spin blocking this gen. And its speed is super, super valuable. Like even being faster than like Glamora and speed tying Landorus, like those are super important. I can't stress enough how important they are, and I really was enlightened to this Mon thanks to Sage. If you're watching Sage, then thank you for showing me just how good this Mon is. But yeah, just access to the same stuff that Rotom has, obviously, but faster. Faster is the key. It's not as bulky, but it's faster. And this speed in particular is super important in this gen. So as a spin blocker, I wouldn't have any other Rotom form, personally. Even your opponent going Terra Ghost in some matchups, right? Like, it's not the best into me, right? Because Ghost doesn't make a lot of sense into me. But let's say they want to spin block me. Let's say I bring a spinner, right? And they have to turn Ghost. Suddenly, like, let's say it's a Raging Bolt. Now their Raging Bolt is weak to my Rotom and Thunderclap is resisted, right? Just something like that, right? I think Raging Bolt is Terraband here, but this is just an example, right? So Rotom has insane, like, really powerful applications for a very low point Mon. I think it's 3 points in this league. And there's really a lot you can do with it. It can still run its nasty plot sets. It can run screens. It can run status sets. It can run Trick, for Christ's sake. Like, it's just a little too good for its point value, in my opinion. So very happy I got Rotom. Speaking of spinners, by the way, our next Mon is a spinner. And like I said, I maybe want to rework these bottom 5. I think Rotom stays. I don't know about the rest. I'm going to have to see what I'm going to do with this. But this is the one pick on my draft that I'm like, I could have probably done better here. Well, the last one as well. But anyway, we'll get to that. Our spinner on the team is Avalo. I know. Not great. Obviously, its massive defense is great for it, but I mean, being that I don't have like a lot of fire weakness and like what else is ice weak to? Like fighting, right? I'm not that fighting weak. I'm not that fire weak. Like it's really just Ogron that's fire weak, and Tinkaton, I guess. But I also have like Garchomp, right? And I have Bundle to punish fire types and whatnot. So I don't know. It's weird. I'm not the biggest fan. Like if it comes, it's basically telegraphing that it's going to spin, and then I have to outplay spin blockers, and it's like, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Avalo, but hopefully it can do something this season. Also, I'm not forced into running Rapid Spin either, right? Because we have the Hawlucha, so I can run Defog if necessary, but it's kind of counterintuitive with the hazard stack. You really need a really good spinner with this kind of build, and I don't think that I got one. So that's the one thing that I would change on this team, truly. But yeah, Avalog's here, and Avalog's going to do its thing. You know how it works. Body press, all that jazz. I think it gets... Does it get Stealth Rock? I don't think it gets Stealth Rock. Nope. So yeah, it's really just a spinning machine. And that's about it. Like it's not really here for anything else. So I guess we can move on. Oh, it can run Dice Icicle Spear. Whoa, big. Yeah, no. It's probably gonna come like maybe once, maybe twice. But yeah, that's Avalo. Now, the way the Terra rules work in this league, I believe it was up to 30 points. Ogron, I forget how much it was. Ogron was 22 points. Well deserved because it's a cracked mon. But yeah, we had 8 points left, I believe. But I didn't use all of them specifically because I wanted this mon in particular. Now, this mon is also probably going to stay on the team. If I make any transactions, it's going to be with like Muck, Avalog, and the last mon. And we'll figure something out. But this mon I want to stick around because this mon is actually obnoxious to deal with. Like, it gets the right matchup. There's not too much Encore on the other side or, like, Taunt and stuff. And it can actually just snowball out of control. It's funny. And its typing is kind of necessary, in my opinion. So, yeah, let's look at our other Terramon, Dunsparce. So, you may be asking yourself, what the hell are you talking about? What is the Dunsparce going to do? But I've had this thing before in another league, in a Showdown league. I think it was LD. It's probably LD. And the few times that it came, it really impressed me. Like, running these kinds of sets, right? Where you just go like this, and you pop on like Calm Mind Roost, right? And then you're also rattled. And then you just do like stored power plus, I don't know, anything really. Any coverage move, right? Like, let's say it's Flamethrower because they have a Goldango or something. Sets like this are actually very hard to deal with. The Eviolite makes it so that this thing is like crazy hard to break. And they need either phasing or some sort of like status. If you bring the right set, it's just like game over. And then toss on the fact that this thing can Terra, and this might be a spoiler for week 1. But toss on the fact that it can Terra, and suddenly it's even harder to break, right? Because now there's certain phasing moves that don't work anymore, right? Dragon Tail doesn't work anymore because I'm Fairy. And then if you want to go like Ghost, because you're afraid of fighting moves hitting you, you can. You just turn into a Ghost, and now you suddenly have another spin blocker. Look at that. And that versatility is kind of important to me. Now, obviously, I could have gotten like a slightly better Mon, but I couldn't find any better setup Mon, which is what I wanted my secondary Terra for, than Dunsparce, funny enough. And I'm happy with it. Let's see what it can do, but I'm a huge proponent of Dunsparce, and I hope that it doesn't let me down this season. So, lastly, you may be noticing that we are missing a specific typing on the team. I didn't have a Dark at this point, and I didn't like how scary setup Psychics looked, so I looked for the strongest possible Dark with like 2 points left at this point, and the only one I could find was Mabostiff. Now, Mabostiff is actually quite interesting. It gets Intimidate. Guard Dog is cool because it can stop opposing Intimidate, and Stakeout's good. Because if it's forcing a switch and something has to come in on like a banded crunch from base 120 attack, That's pretty strong. That's a doubled power. That's a base 160 crunch from Banded, right? That's like insane. And this thing can also run Scarf, right? And then it's got other like really niche stuff going on, like Destiny Bond. It's got Psychic Fangs, which can break opposing screens. It's got Taunt. It's got Trailblaze. I don't believe it gets like Swords Dance. That'd be crazy if it did. It does not. I don't think it gets any setup outside of like maybe Curse. Curse. And that looks to be it. So just Curse. but even Curse is cool, right? You run max HP, max defense. Let's say they're a more physical leaning team. I don't know why this isn't sliding. Come on. There we go. And then suddenly this thing is pretty damn bulky, and they can't really break it too easily. Now, I wish it had any kind of recovery outside of rest. Well, it does have pain split, so that can be utilized. But good coverage as well. Like, I think it's got all the fangs, if I'm not mistaken. If we go by comeuppance is interesting. If hit by an attack, returns 1.5x damage. Okay, so this is basically like Metal Burst. Okay, cool. It's got Outrage, Play Rough. Play Rough's really good on it, I will say, because a lot of dark types like to switch on Mabosstiff. So just having a coverage move that hits dark types, like it doesn't get a really good fighting move outside of Reversal, which is only good when you're low. So having Play Rough on this thing is actually really nice. And then Body Slam is cool. Wild Charge, maybe not the best Wild Charge, but it does get Fire Fang, Ice Fang, Thunder Fang, all that stuff. Trailblaze is cool as well. And then even Payback, right? Because it's like not the fastest one, but it's not the slowest either. But it's not the slowest one, but it's not the fastest either, is what I meant to say. So if you really wanted to, you could make like a banded Payback set, just hit as hard as humanly possible. But like good abilities, good stat distribution. Like I honestly don't understand why this thing doesn't see more play. Maybe I'm missing something, but I think it's actually a decent dark type, and it just doesn't get enough love. It's probably just because there are like a plethora of other better dark types. But as far as like a hard hitting breaker dark, not much actually beats this. It's like what, Zarude, Greninja, like Meowscarada. Like you maybe have like 6 or 7 darks that are better at actually breaking than Mabosstiff, but like for 2 points, why not, right? So that's the team. That's the whole team. Now, like I said, I am considering getting rid of like Mabosstiff, Avalug, and Muck specifically, but it's hard to replace Muck. It's hard to find a better grounded poison. Considering like Overquill, maybe, which was still on the board, maybe Quillfish, right? To, you know, like roll compress the dark and the poison into one. But I don't know. I'm kind of feeling this team. I just wish I had a better spinner, which is what I'm trying to make room for. But even then, there's not that many good spinners down in like 6 to 7 points or whatever. So I might just end up sticking with this. I don't know. We'll see how it feels after like 2-3 weeks, and then we'll decide. But so far, I'm very happy with the team structure. I'm happy with the way that it's felt in the builder, especially for week 1. So you guys will see how that goes at the end of this week. We'll be uploading our week 1 match on Saturday. So make sure you are subscribed for that. Make sure to tune in for that. You'll see it in your feeds on Saturday. Not sure if morning or night, but whatever. But yeah, that's it for our MBC draft analysis video. Let me know what you guys thought of the team in the comments down below, what you would change, what kind of structures you maybe want to see instead of some of the stuff that we've got here. Everything's kind of on the table. I'm not opposed to like dropping anything really, except for like the Terramons and like Dio, because it's my first pick overall. Everything else is kind of available to move around. So let me know what you guys think. I like opinions, especially from stronger players. So do let me know. And that'll be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you have not already, if this is your first time on the channel or otherwise. And I will catch you guys this weekend as we play our week 1 match for the NBC. Catch you guys later. Peace.